This is The Changed Physician, episode 140.
Hey folks, welcome back to The Changed Physician. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, with my amazeballs co-host, Dr. Melissa Katie. Dr. Katie, how are you this morning?
I'm great.
You're
I'm
great.
doing good. Actually, we're like afternoon now.
No, well, okay, you're afternoon. But they
I'm
don't
in
know
here.
that. They could be whatever time we want it to be.
That's
on these
okay.
little recording things.
I
We could
just
say
had
it's
to mix
midnight,
up.
you know? It's midnight. We're doing it at the witching hour. Actually, they think the witching hour is like 3 a.m. or something. But anyway. So for this particular episode, what I wanted to talk to you about is something that randomly popped into my mind, like many of our topics do. But have you ever thought about what would you have done if you hadn't gone to medical school?
Yes.
You had? Okay.
Anytime.
So that's the episode I would like to do. And really focusing on kind of imagining, or at least going back through time and thinking about where you were and what would you have done if you hadn't gone to medical school? Because I think this is important because you see all this stuff, right? Again, we're on these Facebook groups and we're in these physician groups and everybody's complaining, blah, 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 which is part of the reason that we do the Change Physician and say, hey, we got this degree. There's leverage it. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with this. If you don't like what you're doing, no one is forcing you to stay there. Like we do not have, there's the golden handcuffs and all this other stuff, but you are the person who is actively involved with controlling your life. You are ultimately the person who's responsible for crafting the life that you want. But that being said, oftentimes this will come up and people say, oh, I wish I had never done medicine. So then the follow-up should always be, well, what would you have done? So Dr. Katie, we go back through time to your story and tell me, like, what would you have done if you hadn't gone to medical school?
Well, I do want to add on to what you said, why it's important. I think it's also important because sometimes it might help you reveal some of the things that, whether you want to include it as a hobby or some other thing on the side to bring you fulfillment. If these are other things that have always kind of in the back of your mind interested you, or you could have done if you didn't go to medical school. So I think that's important to reflect on because that is something that can guide us. But first of all, let me just say, I did have somebody ask me, well, you were trained to be an interventional pain physician. Why aren't you doing that? Well, because I made a choice to not be part of the traditional pain medicine world. It didn't resonate with me. And what resonated with me would not allow me to keep the doors open. So financially, the system and the medical system and the traditional pain beliefs of practitioners and physicians or patients alike and society in general, it didn't line up with what I was going to offer. And so it probably would not have been easy to make money off of, put it that way. So let me just say there are times where we make a decision to not continue to pursue down the path of the medicine that we already intentionally went into. But before the whole thing in medical school, I actually considered being a veterinarian, which is medical, but I love animals. Just have an appreciation, which I mentioned this just in our recent little topic before this recording. And I also thought about how much I enjoy building things, creating things. I like envisioning things, and I like variety. So it's nice to have projects that change. So it's constantly making you work on the creative side. So I could have seen myself, like, literally, I see some of these people that are creating these businesses, like they're on TV and showing like the the flips on the houses, or doing these cool house projects. Like, I could have totally seen myself doing that. I don't know why.
So I'm gonna a point of clarification there. So if you hadn't gone to medical school, the two things that you're saying is you would have thought of being a veterinarian, and that counts. It's not medical school; it's veterinary school. And the second one would have been like a house flipper. But I want to point of clarification would be, are you saying if I knew then what I know now, that's what I would do? Or are you kind of thinking about, well, back then I would have done this as the alternative?
So both. So veterinarian I actually thought about when I was a teenager.
Okay.
I also, the year before I went to medical school, was applying or getting my things together for considering a massage therapy school. I just like the musculoskeletal system, just have this art with working with my hands. So that was cool. Plus I was an athlete and just I loved building even muscle in my own body. So it's like I had this appreciation for like the musculature and like how, for me, what felt good. And so so that was my view then, that I do some kind of manual therapy stuff, and not necessarily for pain per se, just because it feels good. And then so yeah, the veterinarian part, I don't know if I really had any other thoughts about anything else. If I did, I don't remember them now. But if I knew then what I know now, that I'm physically, I'm just a physically oriented person. So I don't like sitting at a desk. Really had trouble with that with those little jobs I had before medical school. I love variety, which a lot of humans do. I have an entrepreneurial kind of mindset and spirit about me. I'm a self-initiator. So having my own business, being in control of what I'm doing and creating, using some kind of, it doesn't have to be house related, because I didn't have a lot of training that, but I feel like I could pick these things up really quickly. Now that I'm a homeowner, there's certain things that, you just kind of pick up and you're drawn towards. So yeah, I think there's, looking at it, if I could see what I see, back then, see what I see now, I would put myself in a position to be my own boss, some kind of creative, even engineer. I think I look back to some kind of engineer, just the way my mind works. But I think that whole autonomy, creating variety, interacting with people, but also a lot of like just doing the projects yourself, or having someone that you can rely on, you can do together. That would be kind of my, I don't know, sweet spot. What about you?
Or would have been your sweet spot, basically.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I find that that interesting. There's a couple parts I just kind of thinking about potential careers. The vet one, I actually think that's very parallel to what would happen with medicine. And a lot of us, we go into medicine because we want to help people get well, but then we go into a sick care system. And so I would love to actually talk to a vet, because people talk, I wanted to be a veterinarian because I love animals. But then oftentimes what you're dealing with are the sick animals that are, they're not like the healthy, doing everything kind of thing.
Right. Clarification.
Yeah.
Now, on the vet part,
Yeah.
I would probably want to have land and rescue animals and have some kind of farm or some kind of place where I can do gardening and all those other things and have some space from the city. So it would be a different take on helping animals. And that's probably, if I went down the vet, I mean, I might have some kind of like 1 foot in traditional stuff and have my own thing too, or create my own thing.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point, because I do think I think we really should get a vet on, actually, because I'm thinking about, because they burn out too.
Oh, I know one I could probably get on.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested too. We have a family friend. He's retired now, and he went to vet school, and then his regret was he never went to medical school, because his thought was, I did all this work, and then it was a challenging environment being a vet. He did a lot of large animal medicine, which, the cattle and stuff. And apparently that was awful. Some of those interactions, because the cattle were being treated like cattle. Right. And so they're like, oh, this calf isn't coming out, and it's in the middle of winter, and they like chain it was just horrible. Like the stories you had said. So it'd be kind of interesting to get those parallels, because I do think a lot of this comes down to the grass is always greener.
Yes.
On the other side. Right.
Right.
And so I thought about this. I'm like, well, okay, if you're looking at it from who I was when I went to medical school, that would be very different than if I was looking from hindsight bias. Well, if I knew then what I know now. When I was going to medical school, I was a very, very different person than I am now. I was pretty clueless. I was pretty unaware. I knew at the time, like one of the things was like, I was kind of like bartending or whatever. And I was like, there was a moment I kind of went through, we talked about a crisis in medicine in other episodes. This was sort of like a crisis in like a life like a little teeny life crisis when you're 24,
Yeah.
right? What are you going to do? And I had thought almost like I seriously thought about like going to bartender school and moving to Mexico and working at a resort.
Wow.
I'm super glad I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But I think it reflects is that the person who I was back then, I just didn't have a lot of insight and I didn't really know. And so one of the advantages of all this stuff is like when you go into medicine, if you're just sort of like, I'm going to do this, the path is sort of laid out. Like for the next 10, 12 years, you know what you have to do. Medical school, you have to get through the first, second years, you have to go through your clinicals, you have to apply to residency, and it sort of mandates where you're going to be. And then you end up into a position which has a pretty high barrier to entry that, like we've talked about on many episodes, you can leverage this in many different ways. Now, if I had to take that same information though and say, okay, well, knowing what you know now, you're the same Kevin versus past Kevin, who was not me at all, or not much of me, what would you do now? And if I couldn't do medicine, what I would love to do is be in a position where I was selling. Like there was a product or service, something that I believed in, because I think that's super, super important.
Yes.
Not just selling to sell crap.
Yeah.
But then, but being basically a salesman. And I can hear some people, oh my God, salesmen, they're so sleazy and scummy. Well, no. Sales is super cool, like sales and marketing, like the whole persuasive accent. It's all about human psychology, which I love. And I love that. And the other part is then it's almost in many ways, you're bringing something better into the world and encourage adaptation of that and people to pursue that. And then you're really providing, if you're looking at sales as a service, that's what I would definitely do. Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, you're selling as a physician, you're selling as a parent. I mean, selling is kind of part of humanity if you're trying to guide them in a certain direction.
And if I told my kids, like, I actually have told my kids this, is if whatever you decide to do with your life, never, ever ignore the importance of understanding at least the basics of what sales and marketing is. Yeah, so I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't gone to medical school because I wasn't even aware of the importance of it. But if who I am now, if I couldn't have done medicine, or if somehow I was transplanted back in time and they said, you can't choose this career path now, you have to do something else, I would have, that's where I would be. I would definitely be in sales.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some more challenges that I'm unaware of. People who have been doing sales for their life could tell. Actually, I have a friend who's been doing sales for most of his life. We should get him on.
That'd be interesting.
That would be very interesting. Actually, he was in pharma.
Yeah, and then there's the ethics and all the other stuff, interactions with physicians. You just made me think of something I don't think anyone's ever heard me say, of like what I thought about doing too. It just popped in my head. But back as a teenager, I remember thinking, God, it'd be so cool to be one of the backup dancers for Janet Jackson. and I'm not like just Janet Jackson, but like she was pretty popular back then. And
you refer to her as Miss Jackson if you're nasty, remember?
That's right. That's right. And I'm married to a Jackson, so So I just had to throw that in there. I couldn't believe I didn't even think about that, but I guess I was thinking it probably wasn't going to pay me a lot unless you're with a really, if you're like a prominent dancer with a really famous.
I don't even think that pays that much, to be honest. I still don't think it is, and I think there's a lot of reasonings to it. Actually, a whole lot. I don't want to derail this one and go off on that tangent, but yeah. But if that was what your life was and you loved dancing,
I love dancing.
Dancing and music videos and people having fun with you, and
it's fun.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That'd be a totally different life, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I think it also expands in your circles and different people, and then the serendipitous effects of like running in different circles and hearing or seeing different things, and maybe just how people create a system to make money and maybe find that same kind of something else you like, that you just never know who you're going to meet. Let's put it that way.
So adding on to that, so my other career path, and I have told my kids this too, like, this would be my alternate career path. is I'd be a DJ. You know, not like your
See, you could
radio
have been the DJ and I was the dancer.
Well, because I'm talking like DJ like like Dead Mouse and like these EDM people. I like here I'm
Oh.
revealing these dark secrets, but I love like EDM and I don't and people.
This is electronic dance music, correct?
Electronic. Well, I like electronic music, and there's so many different varieties to it. I'm probably going to screw it up because I know what I like, but I don't know all the different genres behind it. But I would love, like, you know, these people who craft this music together and put this stuff. Like, I'm like, oh man, that just sounds like a great thing. Other than the fact I can't stay up past 9 p.m. So I thought, like, oh, what if I had a club and I was a DJ and we started at 6 and we ended at 9:30?
You mean geriatric EDM? You know, gotta go to bed early.
Yeah.
Okay, that was very stereotypical of me, but you know.
No, I agree with it because, you know, anyway, but
yes.
So who knows? Maybe we'll pursue our path. You'll start a farm and animal shelter, and I will become a DJ with a club that closes early for sleep.
Hey,
people.
you know, you never know what can happen. I think one day we will have some sliver of that reality at some point. So
I bet.
Any last thoughts?
No, I say take us out.
All right. Well, we would love to hear what you would have done if you didn't go to medicine, or maybe things that you are envisioning or dreaming of doing outside of medicine, whether it's in conjunction with or instead of medicine. So feel free to shout out at us at any of our venues, Instagram, or you can meet us at our website at thechangedphysician.com, learn a little bit about both of us individually and our intention behind this podcast and community. And you can always go to YouTube to see the video versions of the podcast. And of course, any other podcast venue, you can hear the audio of our episodes that release on Sunday and Thursdays. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And please take care.
Stay well, folks.